Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. I am your host, Ed Dentzel. Still recovering from my trip to Fort Lauderdale and back, going to see now one of my favorite bands of all time, Iron Maiden. In fact, I was so worn out, I will admit that I did not watch any of or listen to any of the debate last night. And wouldn't you know, it's like they have, it's kind of like they knew that I wasn't going to follow it. As I've told you, I didn't watch the first couple. And then there were 3 in a row where I did follow them and watch them or listen to them. But being that each one of them seemed like Groundhog Day to me, the same thing over and over and over, and people making mistakes and not doing what they should. And when I say they, I mean really Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz. I'm like, I just can't put myself through this. And on top of that, I was feeling a little tired last night. Had to go to trivia to support my team. We ended up winning last night. Perfect score. Did not miss a question because we're smart. Came home and I'm like, I just can't do it. I told you I got home at 4 in the morning yesterday from the concert. And wouldn't you know that Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz decided that it was time to, it was like they know Ed Dentzel's not listening and not watching tonight, so I guess we can actually go out all on Donald Trump. It kind of feels like that. And in retrospect, I wish that I would have watched and listened to it, but I just cannot put myself through this. I've told you that even when I've watched those debates, the ones I watched followed, I get frustrated. I get frustrated because I know what needs to be said. I know who needs to have words said to them in a particular way, Donald Trump or whoever else. And when it doesn't get done, the frustration builds up. And I don't want to be yell at the TV guy or yell at the radio guy or yell at my phone guy, which is probably, if I was just listening to it, I'd be listening to it on my phone. I don't want to be yell at my phone guy. That doesn't help anybody. Last night, though, it seems that I would have not been yelling at the phone. I would have been laughing, considering some of the exchanges I saw, just catching the clips I was watching for research for the show because research is allowed. And what do I think's going on? By the way, I guess I'm going right into the show today. No personal anecdotes except to tell you that my trivia team won. I always start off these shows with something personal outside of politics. We got the championship this weekend, by the way. Saturday night. We're second place going into the final. I actually think we could still win it. So I'm hopeful, even though a couple team members aren't going to be able to be there on Saturday night, but we'll see. So you can email me at edwarddentzel@reagan.com. You can follow me on Twitter, Dentzel Domain, all one word, no space in between. So I can only gather, and I'm going to be like maybe some of you who didn't watch it, couldn't watch it, didn't have the energy to, had to go to bed. I'm kind of like you that I have to catch up on a lot of it, watching the videos and reading some blogs, some stories about it. Now, here's what I want to do with this. I think I need to point out what I think's going on with Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio, specifically last night. And then what we're going to do is I'm going to look at this from a conservative point of view, some of the issues that popped up last night. And even though I guess Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz did a good job, here's how they could have done a better job and a better way to paint Donald Trump into a corner. But we're going to do this from a standpoint of conservatism. What is the conservative position? I was talking about that earlier in the week. What is the conservative position between Apple versus the government regarding that encrypted phone? The conservative position is you follow the law. And if you don't like the law, yes, if you want to appeal it, but when it gets to the end, you follow the law. And if you don't like the laws, Tim Cook, CEO of Apple, or the Apple's lawyers or whoever else, you go about trying to change it. That's the conservative position. That's how this country is supposed to work. Not just saying I'm not going to do it for any sort of personal reason. We are not a country of men. We are a country of laws. And we have the ability to change the laws in this country if you have the courage. The problem is, what we kind of do is we make all these restrictive laws and then we let people slide. Some people get to slide, some people don't get to slide. Some people get to ignore the law, some other people are expected to follow the law. And that's what you have in the United States, and it's one of the reasons we're in such a mess. Let's just follow the laws, immigration laws, whatever they are, see if it's good, see if it's bad. I think a lot of them are bad. And people get so frustrated that we'll just change them. That's the way this country is supposed to work, and that's what conservatism is. All right? That doesn't mean that laws should be passed. I'm perfectly fine if we never pass another law in this country for the next 100 years. I know there are a lot of bad laws in the book, but just that alone, if every business in this country found out, you know what, we're not going to take back your regulations, but you know what, for the next 100 years, there aren't going to be any more regulations. No more increase in the minimum wage. No more environmental laws, just the ones that are on the books. The economy in this country, if that was the case, would explode despite us having all of this restrictive regulation that we have in this country. We have to understand that. It's the fear of what government's going to do next that keeps our economy restrained. So getting back to this, here's what I think regarding Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz. I have the impression that people really surprised what happened last night. And reading everything that I saw leading up to this debate, I was under the impression, I'll be honest, hey, I can be wrong, my impression was that this debate was going to go like all the others. There was going to be a little sniping back and forth between, and I'm not even talking about John Kasich and Ben Carson. So if you're supporting either of those guys, they're not getting mentioned anymore on this show. They're just not. They're not players. They're in it for their own reasons. They have no shot. All right, so forget those two. So Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, I thought that it would be them going back and forth, arguing again, them giving Donald Trump a little bit of a hard time, but not much, which has been what's been going on. And in fact, last night, it was the exact opposite. That really Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio hardly argue it at all, and they were going up against Donald Trump. I wonder if this was a plan. I'm wondering because I had the impression, even from the words, kind of what those two said before this debate, that was just going to be more of the same. And then it seems to me, once again, even though I didn't watch it or listen to it, just looking at transcripts, seeing some of the video, it seems almost from the first few minutes that they were both intent on going up against Donald Trump. It seems like Marco Rubio started it, and then Ted Cruz jumped in, and they both started doing a very nice job hammering Donald Trump. I'm wondering if that was planned. I wonder if this was like some secret agreement. I don't know. But there's something else that occurs to me regarding all of this. It very well could be that the message finally got to Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz that your supporters are getting frustrated with you two not going up against this con man. We realize there are huge stakes. We realize you may both lose. But see, when I come to this microphone, I come to you as a regular conservative. So I think a lot of the feelings, not just our own opinions we say about politics, but our feelings are very much the same. And I think you hold a certain idea very dear that I do. And the idea is we don't mind losing as long as it is on principle. If we are expressing our characters and our values and we just happen to lose, then that's the way it goes. And what's frustrated us is that we have lost 2008, 2012, not on our principles. We had a couple candidates who aren't conservative, and on top of that, we're willing to shift their opinions just to fit this demographic, that demographic. That drives, I think, regular hardcore conservatives nuts. We don't mind losing 70% to 30% if it's that 30% guy or woman is expressing conservative values, because we think over the long run, that is how you win. You don't want to give up, get some short-term victory to suffer in the long term. And really what we've done is we've had short-term losses that have turned into long-term losses regarding the last two presidential elections. My opinion. I think a lot of conservatives think the same way. So getting back to Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz, I think those types of people have finally, those people who are hardcore supporters for both of those guys. You know me, I don't email any of the presidential campaigns. I don't send money, nothing like that. But I know there are a lot of people that do. And whether it's through email, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, whatever it may be, just the regular good old United States Postal Service, it could be that some of these regular people are finally saying to the candidates they support, hey, it's about time. Don't make us waver on you. We'd like to see you open up your guns, figuratively, on Donald Trump. It's about that time. I think that that's part of it. I also think that Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz, it could be, and we'll see what happens the next time for the next debate. Remember, we still have a few debates to go. We'll see if they return to their former selves in these debates. We'll see. But it also could be that they start thinking, you know what? If I don't win this nomination, I'm going to be going back to the Senate. I know that I'm going to be running when I get out on not just on the campaign trail, but as a senator. Once I go back to being a senator, if Donald Trump gets the nomination, I'm going to have to be putting up with a lot of crap from people who are going to tell me that I didn't give Donald Trump a hard enough time, and that's why he's the nominee now. And it very well could be that Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz have figured out, you know what? I got to start attacking Donald Trump just to save some face, just to get some credibility back, and that may be part of it too. I know that's not a nice thing to say. I know that doesn't paint them in the nicest light, because then it makes their attacks last night look a little fake. But I'm sure that was part of it as well. I think it's probably a conglomeration of different reasons. It could be that Donald Trump opened himself up to some of this. It could be that their supporters got to Marco, got to Ted and said, hey, it's about time. And it also may be just Marco and Ted Cruz staring at the wall the night before that debate and saying, you know what, at some point, if I'm a conservative, that I'm going to have to save some face here. I'm going to have to at least argue with Ted Cruz or with Donald Trump a little bit and give him a hard time a little bit instead of trying to tear down the other guy who shares about 80% of the same ideas that I do, right? Because I've told you going into this months ago that Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio are not enemies. They're actually decent friends in the Senate. As much a friend as Ted Cruz can have in the Senate these days. So to hear them go back and forth at each other, and we've been there. You know that you have good friends that you've had some pretty serious arguments with. Maybe on politics. I would say that you shouldn't do that. But maybe on other things about women, about life, about your favorite sports teams. And then you somehow get around, you may call each other some names and things. And I know that I've done that with my Pittsburgh Steelers. There have been people that have attacked Ben Roethlisberger saying he's a bad guy. That's happened over the years. But after all that, you have to remember that Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz, at least until this campaign started, got along fairly well in the Senate. So you have to remember that. And maybe that showed, maybe they both remembered that last night, that they kind of kept off each other and focused their attention on the guy who is truly the bad guy. Now, whether this is going to continue, I don't think anybody knows that. It was a surprise last night to most people, mainly because of the way the other debates have gone, and also because what Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio had said going into the debate last night, and then they totally switched it up. Maybe that was a plan. Maybe they didn't want to let Donald Trump know what they were going to be doing. If that's the case, that's pretty nice. I love that. I love it. But I don't know if they'll be able to surprise Donald Trump next time. We'll just have to see what they pull out for next time. We'll just have to see. And, of course, between now and then, we're going to have some elections, some more primaries that are going to take place. Okay. The other question is, regarding those elections, is it going to matter? I don't know. What I think will happen, it may not show up in all of the numbers on Tuesday, but I think what it'll do is it's going to give Ted Cruz people, Marco Rubio people, hope. And they may be able to stick around longer to keep chipping away at Donald Trump and hopefully get some of these media people and other people, regular people, to look into it. In fact, they kind of did that last night with Marco Rubio saying, hey, anybody out there, go Google Donald Trump and Polish workers. Well, got a bunch of people to build, Trump got non-Americans to put up some of his buildings, not just in New York City, but elsewhere. And Donald Trump, outside of that debate, is doing, once again, his fair amount of shooting himself in the foot if Ted and Marco want to take advantage of it. Saying he's getting audited because he's a strong Christian, that's crazy. I have to tell you, just on a complete side note, I truly do believe that Donald Trump is nuts. I believe, we're all, as conservatives, we're saying, hey, Hillary Clinton, is she okay? She fell and then she disappeared for a while and she's wearing those glasses and she's having those coughing fits and everything. I'm telling you, I have serious concerns about Donald Trump and his sanity. Not just within politics. All right? Not just within that. He's not a youngster. He's 68 years old. He's like Hillary Clinton's age. Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, they're still in their 40s. And I'm not saying that Donald Trump is senile or has beginning of Alzheimer's, nothing like that. I just think that he sounds a little crazy. And I don't mean in a political way. But some of the things that come out of his mouth unprovoked is very weird to me. I just don't know. There's something about it that tells me that he's not all there. We'll have to see. That's why one more concern that I have about him being president of the United States. So, Donald Trump's out there saying he's getting audited, but he can't release his tax returns. By the way, I do think that there's something there. I'm led to believe that I don't know if he cheated. I'm not saying he cheated on his taxes or anything like that. I think, moreover, it's good. Would find out that he's not close to near as much money as he says he is. That's what I think. That's what I think. And it's interesting that it seems now Mitt Romney has jumped into this regarding Donald Trump and his tax records, because as you remember, going back to 2012, Harry Reid called out Mitt Romney regarding his tax forms, and Harry Reid admitted later that it was nothing but a political stunt in doing that. But hitting Donald Trump about his money and about his net worth and about his business acumen, that's attacking what most people would believe to be his strength. That's kind of like the Bill Belichick way of coaching. Bill Belichick, well known for being the type of guy that most coaches, most teams, they go after a team's weaknesses. The Patriots go after a team's strengths. They feel that they can execute better. And if they go at another team's strength, that if they can break that down, that's going to be easier than trying to go against their weaknesses and allowing that other opposite team's strengths to just run all over the field. It's kind of counterintuitive, but it can work if it's performed correctly, both in sports and in politics. And it seems like that's what's going on here. Yes, there was talk last night about Obamacare, about real political issues, but a lot of it was also about Donald Trump and what he says about himself and the picture that he has painted of himself. About him being a rich guy and all these millions and he's worth this and he's worth that, when he's really not. So we'll see if that pans out. And the other point, I think, what I saw in the clips that I watched is that, and this is what drives, for any kids out there, watch what is going on, what went on last night if you can. Parents who have kids, that is the perfect way to handle a bully last night. Bullies want to be taken very seriously. And what did Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio do? They finally figured this out. You just can't take him seriously. You have to laugh at him. You make fun of him. You go at his ego, which is something that I've been saying. He has this huge ego, but it's not a solid ego. It's a balloon. It can be pricked. It can be deflated. But you have to know how to do it the right way. Donald Trump does not like to be joked about. Especially when it comes to his money. But if you can do that, you can show him for the weak guy that he is. And once again, for all you parents with kids, I think it's a perfect example. If your kids, somebody getting harassed at school or whatever else, of course, you tell your kid not to put up with it. But also, you have to understand how to get to that bully's ego and how he views himself or herself. Or girls bully too. In the end, the best thing sometimes you can do is say, "Oh, you're so funny. Oh, Donald Trump, you're so cute. You don't really believe that. You're so funny. You don't really believe that. Oh, you say you're worth $5 billion. Oh, we both know you're not. Come on. Why are you trying to tell these people that? Why are you joking around? I can't believe." That's the way you have to treat a guy like Donald Trump. Then at the same time, once in a while, get in the zinger. Well, let's see your tax returns in. Okay. Because his defense of why he doesn't want to bring out his tax returns is hilarious. Saying, well, there's ongoing litigation and this and that. So I wish I would have gotten to watch it. I should have watched it. I didn't watch it, didn't listen to it because I thought it was going to be more of the same. And it wasn't. Just don't know how much of a difference it's going to make. But it's nice to see. And we'll see where it goes. Now, I told you that I wanted to explore some of the conservatism of part of this. And I got about 6 minutes before the break. And then that will take us, into the second half of the program. I want to concentrate on Donald Trump talking about health insurance companies, and of course we could just do a whole thing about what went on regarding health, but last night in the debate. But I want to talk about what is the conservative position. Donald Trump saying, well, we need to be able to allow healthcare companies to sell their products across borders between states, and there's no competition. And Marco Rubio kept hammering him on, you mean that's it? You mean that's it? And that was good. The problem I had with Marco Rubio in what he was doing, even though it was good, and he got a lot of applause for that, a lot of accolades for that today in the blog sphere on National Review, Hot Air, RedState.com. The point has to be made, as conservative, really, we want to get technical on this, politicians shouldn't have plans regarding our economy. I know that sounds like I'm nitpicking, but that's the truth. Now, granted, if Marco Rubio was in an argument with me and asked me what my plan is, I would easily say back to him, politicians aren't supposed to have plans about health care. What do I know about health care? I don't like the sight of blood. I don't like needles. I go to the doctor, but that doesn't really mean that I like going to it. I didn't do well in chemistry. I didn't do well in biology. The only thing I know about the body is when I go to work out, what I need to do to make myself look good. That's about all I know. And you want me to have a plan regarding health care in this country. Now, Donald Trump, he can't say that because he's for big government. He perfectly believes that. He believes, because I believe he's a lefty, that politicians should come to their office with some sort of way that the healthcare system in this country is supposed to work. That, to me, sounds socialistic to me. Now, I know what Marco Rubio was trying to point out. All right? But he could have, on top of that, said, you know what? Here is my plan for healthcare. You know, my plan is the government doesn't have a plan. That's what I would add. That's what I would say if Wolf Blitzer or one of those moderators, what's your plan for healthcare? I'm a politician. I'm not supposed to have a plan for healthcare. I know that's the way we think in the United States. We have a plan for the cigarette companies. We have a plan for the automakers. We have plans for health insurance companies and the entire healthcare system. We have plans for Walmart. Why is government in the United States in the plan business anyway? We're not supposed to be. I'm not a healthcare expert. I don't have any healthcare experts on my staff. I'm friends with some doctors, but I'm going to tell you what they tell me. And here's what they tell me. They wish government would get out of the healthcare business. Well, if that's a plan, that would be my plan. Government to get out of it. Now, of course, Donald Trump, that would be the perfect zinger to what Marco Rubio is saying. Of course, Donald Trump can't say that because he doesn't believe it. And first of all, he's just not that smart. So as conservatives, I want to remind you, we should not get so caught up in this plan stuff. Even though I know a lot of conservatives liked what Marco Rubio was saying to Donald Trump last night. Now, I would add that what Marco Rubio should have said is, you say the health insurance companies are making billions of dollars off Obamacare, then why is every single one of them trying to get the hell out? Do you know what the healthcare stocks are doing in this country right now? They're not doing too great. That's a complete lie. That just shows me Donald Trump doesn't know what the heck he's talking about. All these health insurance companies making tons of money. Then why are they losing money? Why are they trying to get out of it? Why are they regretting getting into an agreement with the government regarding Obamacare? It's a total fallacy. But getting back to the conservatism, all this, the point I would make if I were up there, and unfortunately none of them say it, but it's as simple as the day is long, that politicians and laws do not cure people. Doctors do. The healthcare system, the people who have gone to school, done their internships, did their residencies, took all the additional classes, work 80, 90 hours a week, sometimes 24 hours in a row, 30 hours in a row, trying to make sure that people don't die. Those are the experts on healthcare in this country, and we should allow those people to run it. That's my plan. Just like no politician could run a car dealership or a football franchise. We're perfectly willing to allow people to do that, but when it comes to healthcare, government just wants to jump in feet first. That should be the conservative argument. I got to go to the break. We're going to continue this after the break. You've been listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio.
You're listening to Red State Talk Radio, America's premier conservative talk radio network.
You critics don't define our honor. You try to shame us for doing our job. You teach children to fear us, crowds to attack us, and good people to doubt us. But we will never back down from our sworn duty to uphold the Constitution of the United States of America. We wake up every day, put on our badge, strap a gun to our hips, kiss our families goodbye, and put our lives between the law-abiding and any criminal who threatens their rights. We serve people of every color and creed, men, women, and children in violent, dangerous neighborhoods, because they have the same right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness as CEOs, movie stars, and the political elite. We are Americans, and we are the American police officer. We stand with the National Rifle Association of America, and the NRA stands with us. Together, we're freedom's safest place.
I know. We Christians are just as bad as Muslims who fly planes into buildings and video themselves sawing people's heads off and beheading kids and mutilating women and shooting people who draw cartoons. That's right. You better be just as wary of us Christians, because we don't mess around. Don't be insulting our Jesus, because you think Muslims are bad. Oh, man, don't push us. You think the Muslims are bad when they prey on people for insulting Muhammad? You're really going to get it when Christians pray for you for insulting Jesus.
It could be easy to take what we have for granted and not appreciate everything the men and women of law enforcement do for us every day. So to all my heroes out there, I just want to say thank you.
Thank you for protecting my family,
my business,
my kids,
our community.
Thank you for listening to us,
for being there for me, for keeping me safe.
To all those in law enforcement, thank you.
This is Primo Mondoni, host of the Red State Town Hall. Join me Sundays at 11 p.m. Eastern on Red State Talk Radio, the dominant force in conservative internet talk radio. So, lock it in and rip the knob off.
This is Paul Preston, host of Agenda 21 Radio. Join me Monday through Friday on Red State Talk Radio, the dominant force in conservative internet talk radio. So lock it in and rip the knob off.
And we are back at the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. I want to continue to talk about healthcare and what the conservative point should be about all of this. And I get, once again, maybe this is the reason that I don't watch debates and then I do and I get frustrated, is because there should never be a talk in any of these debates about what the government plan for healthcare should be. We have to remember that. There are people, millions of people, who've by choice gone into that profession because they've wanted to become experts on healing people. Just let them do it. You know what I would have said last night when Donald Trump said, well, we're not going to let people die in the streets. People are dying in the streets. You know what I would have said to him? Then where? So it's not politicians can't cure these people. So it must be the doctor's fault that people are dying in the streets. Are you willing to go on the record tonight, Donald Trump, and say that the reason people are dying in the streets, allegedly, are because of doctors and nurses who have devoted their lives to curing people? I just want to hear you say it. Because once again, I would say to him, laws and politicians don't cure people. You can pass all the laws in the world. And unless you're Bill Frist, who was a heart surgeon, the rest of these politicians have no health care experience at all. So they can't fix these people who are dying in the streets. It's only the hospitals that can. Are you willing to go on the record tonight to say that hospitals in this country are killing people by letting people die in the streets? Are you willing to say that? See, here's the difference, I guess, between me and a lot of people, even some conservatives out there, dare I say it. I do not hold doctors and people in the medical profession in contempt. I think that goes on. I think it's because people don't like getting sick, and when they go to this doctor, they get bad news, and then there's going to be a doctor's bill and all of these things. And I think that resentment builds up in some people, even people who should know better. I think that's why some of this goes on, and why some politicians, even if they may be conservative, don't talk about health care the way I do. Do I know that there are some bad doctors out there? Yes. Bad nurses? Yes. Bad MRI technicians? Yes. Very few. And I would say that in any profession in the United States, except maybe for car sales. I have experience in that, and I can tell you it's probably just as bad as you think. Of course, that's 20 years ago now. But I believe that these people, they go through all this money that they spend in work. I think they do it for reasons other than getting rich. I really believe that. Maybe I'm naive. But being that I know that, I think that if you were to leave the healthcare system in the United States up to the markets and to the people who deal with patients every day, here's what I know. All these people who complain about pre-existing conditions, those nurses and doctors would figure out a way to figure it out. Eventually. It wouldn't happen overnight, but they would figure it out, because you know what? I believe a large majority of these doctors and nurses do care about these people. And they'll figure out something. They'll figure it out. But we've gotten so caught up, once again, like Donald Trump, with knocking down the barriers between states. And he said there is competition. I've told you, I pay for my own health insurance. Even despite Obamacare, there are some choices. They've just gone up in cost. You still have choices. It's just they all have gone up in cost, and some companies have gotten out of the business. So he's wrong about there could be more competition. There could always be more competition. But that alone is not going to fix all of this. You know, I will go on the record for saying I don't believe insurance companies should take people with pre-existing conditions. I'm on the record for saying that. That's not how insurance is supposed to work. I know what's going to happen if you force insurance companies to take those people. Costs are still going to be high, no matter if Obamacare exists or not. The way I see pre-existing people getting handled and getting their care is through a private system out of the pocket. I know that sounds crazy. I know it sounds crazy because it's so expensive. But once again, it gets back to going to doctors and nurses and say, you know that these people have problems. What can you do for them? We as the government, we don't want to be involved. We don't want to be involved in this. Can you do something for these people? If I know these people exist, doctors and nurses know these people exist. I think the reason, though, that this is all popped up also is there are a lot of people that think they should get stuff for free. And this is a point that I don't think that I've made recently regarding all of this. There is a sector of our population, most of them being liberal, who even if something was $1, they'd think it was too expensive. Now, I don't know what you can do about those people. See, I'm under the impression that when it comes to our healthcare system in this country, the customers are more of the problem than the healthcare people are. Okay? If you want to compare the morality of your average patient compared to the average morality of your average doctor, I will take the doctor every day and twice on Sundays. That's where I live. And because I think that way, and I think these doctors and nurses and all these other surgeons and anesthesiologists, and I just kind of put it into the general category of doctors and nurses, they want to help people, just let them do it. If something's expensive, a person needs it, just work it out. They might do some pro bono work. They might put them on a payment plan. You know, that patient might have to come up with a GoFundMe page, but it's certainly better that than the government being involved, because all it does is it just causes doctors and nurses to get out of the business. Right now, there are too many people with their hand in the till between the customer and the doctor, the patient and the doctor. Too many people. There should only be two people involved, the patient and the doctor. People should be able to look around for any doctor that they want. There should be competition among doctors and nurses. I'm not even going to talk about the insurance companies. Because the truth is, if we were to go back to a cash society when it came to healthcare, we'd be all better off. You know, health insurance is not the same as car insurance. It's different. Health insurance you get for yourself, car insurance you get for the other person. It's different. That, I know it seems like a fine line, but it's a big deal. The conservative position, once again, is government shouldn't have plans for health care. In fact, if there's going to be a plan, it should be government getting out of health care. That's my plan. That's my plan. Government getting out of health care. Whether that means 1%, 10%, 50%, 100%, that's the direction we're going, period. Lower regulations, letting doctors deal with customers one-on-one without the government being involved, less paperwork, doctor being able to get paid for what they do, and a big part of this is also Medicaid and Medicare that don't pay, ripping doctors off, too many government officials, red tape, taking that money away. It's all a big disaster. Government should be out of all of it. So I just want to remind you, as much as you like what Marco Rubio said last night, that in the end, government's not supposed to have a plan. That's why he couldn't get away with that argument with me. What's your plan, Ed? Marco Rubio asked me. Government's out of healthcare, period. Every law that's on the books regarding healthcare is repealed. Obamacare and the rest of them. That's my plan. That's what I'm going to work toward. Repealing all of it. Not just Obamacare, all of it. We do that, costs will come down, but I know that's not the politically expedient thing to do. But I'm just trying to remind you, outside of politics, what the conservative position should be. Let's move on to something else. American workers. I had this written in my notes yesterday, but I didn't get around to it. Regarding tariffs in China, and I know that Trump got zinged for all these products that are made in, that have his name on it that are made in Mexico and China and elsewhere. And Marco Rubio talked about, he mentioned the Google, how Donald Trump used foreign workers, Polish workers for some of his buildings, and then down here in Florida. And then Trump goes on the record saying, well, Americans won't take those jobs and all of that. Here's the issue. Once again, the conservative point of view on this particular topic outside of the politics of it. The truth is this. If we were to move somehow, some way, if all that stuff that is made in China, for example, were to come back to the United States, your average person thinks, well, then American workers would get to do it. That's not going to happen. Here's why. The reason that those products are made in China is because it's cheaper to make them in China than it is in the United States. If those products were made in the United States, your average American wouldn't be able to buy them, first of all. But there is something else to think about regarding all of this. A Chinese worker, then, is cheaper to employ than an American worker. I think everybody knows that. The problem is that if you were to move those jobs back to the United States, a machine is cheaper to employ than an American worker. However, a machine is more expensive than a Chinese worker. That's how that all works out. The most expensive employee in the world is an American worker because of our cost of living. All right? That's first of all. Second of all, the next cheapest would be a machine in China doing the work. Then next cheapest would be a machine in the United States doing the work. And finally, the cheapest is a Chinese worker doing the work. Because at some point, somebody has to do the work. Some machine or some person has to do it. They just don't fall from the sky. Shirts and ties and all these little trinkets you can buy all over the place in the United States, this cheap stuff, doesn't just fall from the sky. Somebody has to make it. Somebody has to do something. Or something has to do something. But even with a machine, somebody has to push the button to start it, and then there have to be humans around looking to fix those machines if they break down. So even if those jobs came back to the United States, it wouldn't be American workers that are doing that. It's not like if some industry has 5,000 Chinese doing that job, that if the job came back to the United States, it would be 5,000 Americans doing the job at $15 an hour. No, it would be like 50 machines doing it. Remember that. Remember that. That's how this all works out. And that's why what Donald Trump and others who have brought this up in the past about trade barriers and deficits and all those things, they never talk about that. You know, Pat Buchanan, I guess, was probably the guy who's been trumpeting this for all these years, going back maybe 25 years, about it's not fair and it's a form of populism and trade barriers and doing the work in the United States, not allowing these companies to go elsewhere and all of this. You know what Pat Buchanan is going to do if all those products they get more expensive because they're made in the United States? He's just not going to buy them. But he'll never change his position. He's never going to change his ideas. He just won't buy the stuff anymore. But he'll keep saying, yep, when those jobs need to be done in the United States. Doesn't matter that nobody's going to buy them. Now, the rest of us can't afford it. You have to remember something, once again, this goes back to the conservatism of all of this, is that when you protect a particular industry by trade barriers, really what it does is it makes whatever that product more expensive. So you have 1% of the population of the workers, employees who get protected, and guess who ends up paying for that? The rest of the other 99%. If they even buy that product, more likely what's going to happen is the rest of the 99%, they're going to say, you know what, I don't need that product, or I don't need that service that bad. I'm just not going to buy it. That's what's going to happen. But Pat Buchanan, Donald Trump, they're not going to bring those things up. And other politicians, there's other Republicans or so-called Republicans who think that way. They get all crazy about China not taking a lot of our stuff. You know why they don't? Because they can't afford it. You know why Mexico doesn't? Because they can't afford it. You know why Canada takes some but not all? They have trouble affording it too, especially now that they're devaluing their Canadian dollar compared to the American dollar. It's cheap for us to go here, but it's expensive for them to come here. So it's cheap for us to buy Canadian products, but it's expensive for them to buy American products. Once again, if you're conservative listening to this, you need to remember all that. In the end, if he were to do that and those jobs were to come back to the United States, there's nowhere American workers would be taking those jobs. They'd figure out some machine to make those shirts and to make all that stuff. Because employing American workers is just too dang expensive. And they're expensive, and it's not all because of government. A lot of it is due to government, but it's just because we have a high cost of living. We have a lot of nice stuff here. And in the United States, we do a lot of good work here. We got to remember that. Despite Barack Obama, despite all of our regulations and all of that. But it could be so much better. But it's not going to get better if you take the attitude toward healthcare and trade that a lot of people do. Waste, fraud, and abuse. I want to touch upon this once again from the conservative position. And this should be a tip-off to you if you ever get in an argument with somebody. And as a conservative, we believe in the cutting of costs of government, and you run into somebody who says, oh, we don't have to do this. We just have to get rid of the waste, the fraud, and the abuse, and all of this will be fixed. As soon as you hear somebody like that, you should know that that person is not serious about cutting anything. I'm not going to deny that there is a waste, fraud, and abuse that goes on in government. You know why that happens? Mainly, it's because humans are involved. We are wasteful people. We make bad decisions. Yes, there's a lot of fraud that goes on, underhandedness, but a lot of it also is just people making mistakes. All right? And anything in the world where humans are involved, it happens. But if somebody's going to try to convince you that we can get Obamacare under control or we can balance the budgets and everything just because of waste, fraud, and abuse, they aren't serious. And I would not take anything that they say after that seriously. These are people who aren't serious about fixing problems. What they're really saying is, we want to just keep the status quo. But you know what? They can't say that because that makes them look like an even bigger idiot. Whereas they think, if I talk about the waste, fraud, and abuse, man, that really sounds like I care about government and really about doing the right thing. The right thing is our government is too big. It can't handle itself. It is the most broke organization in the history of the world, and you're thinking that counting some pennies here and there is going to fix stuff. Because I'm telling you, no matter what the cost of this waste, fraud, and abuse is, it doesn't come close to what our national debt is, doesn't come close to the deficits that we've been running. It just doesn't even figure. For you personally, it would be like finding losing a $20 bill in the couch or just flying out the window of your car. A $20 bill is not going to, make your month any better or any worse. Yes, it's a loss, but that's what it's like. So as a conservative, remember that. As soon as you hear that, all we need to do is we want to make Medicare and Medicaid and Obamacare a lot better. We just have to get rid of that abuse. There's no doubt that goes on. But the problem are the programs themselves. The programs themselves, as they are created, are the problem. It's not the waste and abuse that goes along with it. But I got to go. You've been listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. You can email me at edwarddentzel@reagan.com. Follow me on Twitter, Dentzel Domain, all one word, no space in between. edwarddentzel.com is where you can find all of my old Red State Talk Radio shows. You can go to edwarddentzel.com/book, where you can find the first chapter of my new novel called The Comebacks. You can download it for free. You can find my shows at Podbean, Podomatic, SoundCloud, and YouTube. find me on LinkedIn and Facebook. You've been listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. Have a great weekend.